morning, everybody. Not only the world of gender is changing, but more things in the world are changing, especially in Europe. The European Commission defined 14 megatrends that are happening, and they could have a positive or negative or maybe no impact on gender roles and gender equality. Two of those are very prominent. It's the transition towards a green Europe and the transition towards a digital Europe. And we know from experience that women tend to be left out when it is about consuming, but mostly when it is about being employed in these sectors. If we're moving towards a greener and more digital Europe, what are the implications for gender equality, and what should we be doing to ensure that all genders are represented equally and benefiting equally from this transition? That's what we're going to talk in this session. My name is Roger Elshout. If you're not Dutch, stick to Roger. I'll be your moderator for today. What are we going to do? EIGE is going to give a very short presentation on what the connection between these two things is. And then we invited three experts in the fields of youth, digital and green to give their views on what the connection might be. And we invited three policymakers to react on what they just heard. And then we want to discuss with you a few things that are coming from the presentation of Claudia from EIGE. Especially what we should do to involve girls in the green and digital labor market from an early age on and make sure that they are involved in this. We also have, because we want this session to be as accessible as possible, you're not allowed to use any jargon. So I like guitars, but whenever you hear some jargon that shouldn't be in here, raise your hand and shout bingo, then I'll throw a chocolate to you. Yeah. So don't be too eager and say every word is jargon we shouldn't be using, but if it's one of those words you think, it's a word that only makes sense in the gender equality community and outside this building no one knows what it is or cares or misuses the word, raise your hand, we'll throw you a chocolate. We also want to have your opinion. Also, when you're joining from anywhere in Europe or anywhere on the globe, you're joining digitally, we want to hear your voices. Same for you in the audience. So I'm going to ask you to take your phones, your laptops, smartwatches, or anything connected to the internet, and you go with your phone to menti.com, and magically a QR code is going to appear above my head. Wasn't me. The QR code is going to appear magically somewhere. There it is, menti.com, and the code today is 2200, that's in the future, 366, so 22000366. And you can also scan the QR code that's either appearing on your screen at home, or you see on the screen here above my head if you're joining physically. So 22000366, and the first question we have to you is, a green and digital Europe, is it also a more gender equal Europe? You can say yes, by default. Anything that's green and digital automatically leads to more gender balance. Or you can say, well, this really depends on the policies we do, how we do it. Or you can say it depends on other factors. So whatever the policymakers think of, whatever we think of in this room, there are some other trends or factors that are going to influence this. Okay, so again, menti.com, 22000366, or take a picture of the QR code. And so far, you seem to be policy optimists. You think the world can be created by policymakers, and we can shape the world to our likings, because you all say it depends on the policies that we do. Some people say other factors. Where is my microphone? Hi, good morning. Who are you?
Good morning. My name is Jonas.
Jonas, what do you do?
I'm a policy officer at Belgian Institute for Gender Equality.
Okay, and a green and digital Europe, is it by default a more gender equal Europe?
I don't think so. I think there's a big chance, but it will depend on the policy.
Depends on what kind of policies? You're here to find out. Okay. Throw it somewhere there. Yeah. Just hit someone. It's very soft. You can't hurt me. Yeah. Well, you first. Hello, who are you?
Hi, I'm Robert, and I clicked the same box, so I'm into the policies. And I'm not as much as an expert of these policies as to propose any solutions here, but that's why I'm here.
Why I'm here.
To
Okay,
learn
so
about them.
we're gonna
and
hear-
I want to have some sweets later, but
Okay, so if we hear, hopefully you leave this room with some ideas of how we can make sure that it's also a just future.
I hope so.
Okay, find someone on the left.
rather than throwing it.
Hi, good morning. Who are you?
Hi, my name is Jana. I work for Women Engaged for a Common Future,
Yeah.
eco-feminist NGO. I also clicked the box for policies, but not necessarily because I have so much confidence in the policies, but I think it's, for now, the only thing we have to actually change the system. So I think that's why it should go through policies. Other than that, I would personally be more up for like a paradigm shift in which gender is more included and let me see the world more through a gendered lens. But for now, I would go for the policy.
But until now, the tech world has been a man world because they understand how computers work and girls weren't interested, they were playing with Barbies. But that was the past. Now, all kids are growing up much more equal. Girls are as good with technology as boys are. So in 20 years, this problem will have solved itself.
Oh, then I think we have a very different view on how the world looks today. I think there's definitely still a very long path towards that true equality, and I think that a lot of boxes still then have to be changed, or like this binary system which we still live. So I think there's a lot of work to do. So, yeah.
Okay, well, so there's a lot we still need to do. Okay, well, thank God EIGE did some research on this, and they can explain to us whether it really is already the case that things will even out automatically, or that maybe the world isn't as positive as I was now portraying it. To explain to you, I'm going to call to the stage Dr. Claudia Villante, Senior Researcher at ISTAT, Italian National Statistical Office, and they were so friendly to lend you to EIGE for a few years to do some research on this topic, and you're a seconded national expert at EIGE.
Thank you.
Okay, so also, the second question we want to ask the audience is, because we're going to talk about, so far this conference we've been talking a lot about specific policies on gender equality. Now we're going to talk about some other policies on the digital and green Europe, and we're going to see how well they have done gender mainstreaming in it. I'm going to ask you I put a few EU policies on your screen. We have the labor policies, the Erasmus+, which is exchanges for youth, the Green Deal, all the environmental things, Horizon, technological innovation, our space program, where the Galileo satellites and we're going to Mars maybe, citizens and civil rights program, and the directive on the CO2 emissions of heavy-duty vehicles. Any moment the Commission can drop a proposal when trucks should be zero emission. I had a big debate about it. We discussed the economy, we discussed the ecology, we discussed technology. Gender wasn't mentioned once. And maybe because, well, maybe a truck doesn't have a gender, but maybe they should, because maybe it's relevant to do these things. And you can rank it on a scale from completely gender blind to, oh, it's so gender inclusive and gender responsive. So far, people in the audience aren't very positive about the EU. Horizon is nearly colorblind, but especially the Green Deal forgets women, and the CO2 emissions, well, also because I just explained it, but they completely forgot gender. Is this something that you would, if you would fill the numbers yourself, you would basically come to the same conclusion?
But I don't know now, because of course there are completely different programs in that there are some examples, of course, when we speak about the policies, so how to integrate the gender mainstreaming in the policies. This is our topic now.
Yes, okay. Well, you are going to explain a little bit the research you've done on how a green and digital Europe also translates into a more equally just, gender-just Europe. I would say take your presentation, take it away.
Thank you very much, Roger. Thank you. And I want to starting with some data on how young women see themselves to the challenge. And I would like to highlight how there are some constraints that are deeply rooted in the past are present and are also can be treated in our future. But although there are some ways to avoid this threat, which I can briefly try to introduce. The future starts with our children. The ways girls and boys see themselves are vastly different. As you can see, even if girls and boys are given equal learning opportunities, boys are naturally seen as engineers or data scientists, whereas girls simply not. As you can see from the research, the perception matches the confidence which then reflects reality, for example, of installing simply software on PC. And that influences their projection of a STEM career. STEM, before to give some jargon, is science, technology, engineering, and math. Are you women ready for the twin transition, being green and digital? Technically speaking, yes, they are. Because young women have a proven record of being the best performer on tertiary education. Women are coming out of tertiary education with solid degrees, which in theory equips them for a STEM careers. But it doesn't add up. As you can see, research shows there is a gender gap when it comes to women in STEM. This then restricts women's choice, again because of an unconscious and installed gender stereotype. This will have a knock-on effect on women involved in the twin transition, and then not seeing women involved only reinforces the existing gender gap. We are at turning point now with the twin transition. Going green and digital at the same time means new skills are in demand. Looking at AI, artificial intelligence, we know is our future. And the future is in the hands of the young women and the young boy. Right now, only 16% of highly skilled AI workers are women, and we also know there is a huge gender gap, pay gender gap on ICT, information communication technology. The gendered stereotypes that women face in the physical world are being extended into the digital world. We know, for example, that also in the AI algorithm or in machine learning process, we affect a lot of gender bias and their intersectionality. So, at the same time, we can see that gender-based violence risks translating from physical to virtual. This is cause and effect situation. Therefore, unconscious gender prejudice risks gender discrimination in AI alongside high security risk for girls, which are factors that discourage female talent and hinder their participation. When it comes to high-level decision-making roles, women are not front and center, especially in the environment, energy, and transport sector. In line with planned actions such as the Gender Equality European Strategy 2025, it is imperative that women are involved in the decision-making process from the start of the programs. But as EIGE's research on women and men in decision-making shows, we can say that only 3 out of 10 people that hold decision-making position in this field are women. How do we move forward? we have to take and consider and twofold steps with a women-centered approach, so the outcome shift the deal. First, eliminating gender stereotype, where women become a transformative part of the twin transition. This starts from the early education year. Second, education and training systems need to be adapted to our new socioeconomic reality, where decision-making mechanisms involve women. More women in the high-level position means benefiting from broader perspectives. Perspective means bringing skills, ideas, and innovation to the table, and can lead to a measurable impact in our society and economies. This is also a key area of action of 2022 strategic foresight. Lastly, in order to see this in reality, we need to adopt gender mainstreaming at all stages of policy cycle. What does it mean, gender mainstreaming? It's very easy. Meaning integrating a gender equality perspective in all stages of policy cycle. Meaning that when a policy is being developed, it needs to be developed for both women and men. But how does it work? Gender mainstreaming is not just a theory. It is a proven practice. We can take the success story for the member state and we use practice and tools that EIGE indeed offers with step-by-step instruction. This is a snapshot of our EIGE's gender mainstreaming platform. We have plans, tools, and methods to rewrite and shape the immediate future. For example, we have these important tools that we already produce in order to support research organization, research performing and funding organization in applying in a Horizon Europe program, as we can see as one of the policy that we can support. To conclude, it's up to us, to each of one of us, to take full responsibility of picking up that pen and shape a new and more modern reality by eliminating outdated stereotypes, sexism and discrimination in the labor market. And gender mainstreaming is our starting point. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So we see girls outperform boys in education on all sides, but that doesn't translate into girls choosing STEM, and that also doesn't translate into them getting positions in these sectors. We're going to focus in the discussion also much more on how to change this, but gender mainstreaming is much more than just encouraging girls also to pursue careers in this field. It also means adapting the products we make to not only men and maybe some other things. Why is this focus on this education part so important?
Yeah, because it's the first part. It's exactly the first part when the gender mainstreaming can introduce in our policy. We should to start from the beginning, exactly. And yeah, that's important and fundamental part of the policy cycle.
Okay, well, at the end of the session, I'm going to ask you to also to pick some suggestions from the audience and give some ideas about what should happen next and also how EIGE is going to help with that. Thank you very much. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, so we asked 3 people to give a very short, maximum 4-minute idea of how they see a green and digital future also being a gender equal and gender just future. First of all, I'm going to ask a board member of the European Youth Forum. It's the umbrella organization of national youth councils and European youth organizations in Europe. Piet Chatz-Michal. I should have practiced more. Please come to the stage. I'll give you a microphone and your 4 minutes start when you start speaking.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me as a speaker from the European Youth Forum, but also I want to let you know that there are also National Youth Council and representatives from our membership, so do engage with young people that are representing you at national level. But otherwise, I think it's very important to be here and discussing topics which are not normally related as youth topics. I think it's quite important, and especially when we talk about data. When we talk about digitalization and climate change, we need to understand that youth is the one at the front run when it comes to tackling climate change. It's also very important to understand why. There are two elements that affect us. The existential, as young people, we're going to be the ones living with the longest part of our life with the impact when it comes to climate change or lack of policies when it comes to green transition. On the other part, us as European Youth Forum, we also understand the systemic issue. If we don't take appropriate and long-term appropriate solutions, we don't see a change that has an impact for the long run. But it's really important to understand as well that within this, in the framework of the twin transition, that we almost say that we're all in this, we're all part of this change and we all need to contribute. With the data, we need to understand that we're not all in the same boat. We're all in the same sea. But there are the factors of intersectionality, race, age, and other factors that really, really impact the view, the contribution, and participation when it comes to combining the green and digital aspects and the policies we take forward. In your first question, you asked what is factors or policies. It can be a mix of both, because at the end of the day, if factors are not taken into policies and we don't acknowledge what is happening around us, those policies will lack reflection, will lack to tackle the issues that we face as people, which those policies are made of. On the other part, we need to understand as well, with gender mainstreaming, the lack of rights-based approach in policymaking, and understanding that green policy and digital transition needs to reflect and respond to people's issues. What does that mean? What rights-based approach means? It means taking intersectionality, taking gender stereotypes, taking mistakes that we've done from our past, and we kind of say, back in my country, Cyprus, the sins of our parents torture our kids. And I think this is reflective on our policies and education. We, in research, in data, in policy making, in engagement, in civil society, what we have come to learn is to listen. But then that listening needs to transition into action, into policy. Really understand that talking about green and digital has different factors. For example, the footprint of digital work and engagement into the environment. Why do we lack having a conversation about that? We hear about the cryptocurrency and its impact on the environment, but there are things beyond that. We need to really understand how this climate emergency that we're in affects as well pre-existing issues, but also engagement and accessibility. So on the one part, we have the digital space impacting our lives and our climate, and on the other side, the accessibility and lack of in the digital space to help bring new ideas that can help the green transition. And I think the most important part is as well to see representation in this dialogue. And I would just ask, do you know how many young people are in the European Parliament currently? Under 35, let's say, let's go with the Council of Europe setting of age. 6 people. There are 700 plus members of the European Parliament. And out of them, 3 are women. 6 people, so we have a gender balance in youth when it comes to that, at least.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. May I, yeah, you get a round of applause, definitely. And I invite you to take a seat here. Our next picture is an entrepreneur. She founded Teachers Lead Tech. That's a learning platform for primary school teachers that help to bring fundamental IT skills to every girl and boy in the classroom. In 2015, she established a technology academy that reached more than 20,000 kids in Lithuania, and now she's on a mission to impact 20 million kids by 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, Monika Katkutke.
it's accurate to take the candies for me because I'm learning on all the new things today, all the acronyms. So I've been in tech for 15 years, and we have to all admit, I guess, that technology is changing how we live, how we communicate, how we dream, how we travel, how we create, and how we solve problems. And it's very likely that the challenges that we face today and will face tomorrow will be solved by conscious humans who know how to use technology well, so we can serve the global population, the growing population of 8 billion people. And to me, my question today and for the last 7 years is, how do we ensure that educational systems help every child to learn technology creation as a basic skill, next to reading and maths, and despite their gender, socioeconomic background, location, or their learning abilities? To me, digital skills, technology skills, computer science skills, you name it, are hygiene for a 21st century learner. And behind the challenge that we have, there is a powerful group of women that have been underserved for decades. And these are primary school teachers. 30 million of whom serve more than 700 kids daily, despite the weather, their mood, economic, geopolitical conditions, and they do it wholeheartedly. And my mission is to understand what happens, how badly and how education shifts for every learner when a primary school teacher, or 1 million of them, believe that they can bring relevant 21st century engaging skills to their kids in the classroom, and to serve both as a role model on what it means to learn and as a role model what it means to be brave to create in the 21st century. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Find a seat. We're going to talk much more about this educational factor, but first I'm going to introduce our third speaker. Joining us online, they call themselves an eco-feminist, and they're as a senior policy officer for economic transition and gender equality at the European Environmental Bureau. They're working on economic transition policies and advocating for a feminist economic system centered around care and well-being for the planet and people. Katie Wiese.
Hello. Thanks so much also for giving me the opportunity to be here today. So I thought I start a bit with my personal way, so to say. So basically in 2020, I joined the Women's March in Brussels. So there was a lot of rain, but despite this like typical Brussels weather, with me were over 6,000 other demonstrators. And as a feminist, I joined this because I just cannot accept that despite efforts, we are still far away from being gender equal. So no country in the world has actually achieved gender equality or is on track by 2030. And yeah, we all know that inequality is bad for everyone, also including men. So that's what feminism is about. But then as environmentalist, I also marched because environmental and gender issues are very inseparable. So climate change, and we have heard it before, is disproportionately affects women because they're often poorer due to the social inequalities that we see, like gender pay gap, pension gap, etc. And often they are not involved in political and household decision-making processes that deeply affect their lives. So I was irritated and even a bit angry, I think, to hear also the numbers on representation. So, for example, that 70% of climate negotiators are male, although women are actually disproportionately impacted by climate change. So I marched because gender issues must be integrated into environmental policymaking and decision-making processes, but also programs and projects, if we really want to be serious about transforming our society so that they work for people and the planet. And already mentioned before, I think this requires system change. This requires a new feminist economic model that's centered around care and environmental protection. But I do think this is possible if we're serious about breaking the structures of power and dominance that we see, and also if we tackle the injustices from the past and the present. And I would also like to caution, while I don't think we should not expect that progress towards gender equality will like magically solve all environmental problems. I think we heard also in this conference from other speakers that there's mounting evidence that advancements in gender equality can have a positive impact on environmental well-being as well. And I think it's also important to highlight this applies for the Global South as well as the Global North. So that's why our EIGE and also other partners advocate for integrating ecofeminist ideas into environmental and climate policies. But maybe we can talk a little bit about this later. Thanks.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, a round of applause. Okay, so we asked the audience earlier to rank some of the EU policies on how well they take gender into account. Well, people were not very generous with their numbers. Can we have that slide back on screen, please? Here's the microphone. How did you rank the EU policies, more or less? Oh, yeah, can we see it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see it again. Labor policies, let's say in the middle.
Yeah.
Labor policies, Green Deal, space program, I ranked it rather blind.
Yeah.
I really don't know about the space program, it's just assumption. Citizens and civil rights in the middle, and directive of CO2 emissions, because of what you said, completely to the right.
Okay, so basically everything that has to do with people is moi, and everything that has to do with technology, no.
Probably.
Okay, yeah, that's your gut feeling. Okay, how's that for you? How did you rank the EU policies?
More or less in the middle, because probably, like the majority of the people, I understand that these are the ones which are a bit more
Okay, so
advanced, because they have been debated already for quite a long standing.
Okay, so it's not forgotten anywhere, but also it's not done perfectly anywhere.
No,
yeah,
for sure. I think the challenge is really the Green Deal, and I mean what we are discussing now here, because here we are in the loop that we don't have gender-sensitive policies. We don't integrate it properly into the Green Deal, because we also don't have data which could serve and inform and help to evaluate. So. And then we don't have data because we don't have policies.
Of course, okay. Pete, you already mentioned it's so good that now young people getting involved in not just the youth policies. I remember I was in the Dutch Youth Council, same frustration. We were only consulted on education maybe and youth welfare, but not the big things that were impacting. Is it getting better? Is this mainstreaming a more mainstream thing now?
Well, we're pushing for it. It's not easy, but it's been more outspoken. I think it's becoming a mainstream topic, and thankfully, as well, taking into account that it's the European Year of Youth, we do kind of push a little bit the engagement of young people and engaging the diversity of opinions within inside. But I will agree with the data. We are going always on binary data. We're going on the privileged engagement of representatives that we have. And thankfully, you have organizations like the youth councils that bring a more diverse point of view, or international organizations really showing that we do care. And as young people, we are the first generation that grows up within a digital world and acknowledges the impact of it on the green level. But on the other side, we are the first generation that has this huge amount from the time we're born of online data. And that goes with other parts, like the stereotypes we talked before, the engagement and the perspectives. Thus, we are kind of pushed to bring the topic into the mainstream because it's part of our life. It affects every part of our life from the moment we come into this world.
How would you rank the EU policies on youth or gender mainstreaming?
Well, from my perspective, I think it's a little bit of a two-man oriented. There are indeed policies, thankfully, working as well on the academic level. I would say that I see efforts a lot in research, in Horizon, to really push for engagement of women. But on the other side, I see lack of women in defining that funding, in defining the elements that bring inside diversity within these programs. We've been talking about inclusion in Erasmus Plus since I was doing my Erasmus, and that was 10 years ago. So we really need to think about, as was said before, the data and the engagement and the right-based approach we have not only to engage people at the defined programs we have, but at the moment we define the programs, to have engaging policy participation.
We're gonna dig a little bit more deeper into the different aspects of mainstreaming. Katie, people rank the direction on CO2 emission on heavy-duty vehicles very lowly, also maybe because I slightly influence them. On the other hand, I can think a truck, zero emission or non-zero emission, the pollution impacts men and women equally. Sitting in the truck is same for men and women equally. So yeah, should there be any gender aspect on all these kind of policies?
Thanks a lot for the question. Yeah, I think here we also need to look at our mobility system as such. So there are, for example, studies that men and women have different mobility patterns, so the way they travel. So women tend to have more sustainable transport choices, and that's also due to their roles in society, right? So they mostly still take most of the care work, so that also affects the way they travel. So women tend to do several trips a day. It's called trip training because they take care of their friends or family or whatsoever, whereas men tend to commute more from to work and then also with mostly with cars.
And we know we have a major shortage of truck drivers. Most truck drivers are men. Should then, when we think about how trucks should look like in the future, already think about, how can we make them more gender friendly? Or is that a different department?
No, I think that's also part of the equation. So one thing is like, how can we actually make our mobility system more sustainable as such? And then the other part is how can we make the transport sector more gender equal? Because that's also one of the domain which is highly male dominated, as you just mentioned. So how can we improve, for example, working conditions for women to incentivize them to be a truck driver? Because right now they are not very gender friendly for both.
Yeah, Monica. So there might be gender components on other policies, and also if we want to solve the gender problems in this, we have to look very, very broad. It's the same in technology. Are there much more gender aspects to policies than we sometimes think?
I guess because technology sector is quite new, it still has a lot of stereotypes around it. So we still see it from a very narrow perspective. So a bunch of guys building something, programming, etc., but that's just a very tiny bit of technology sector. And even today, like the last year, only 2% of female startup founders received funding in European Union. That's 2%, which is not even funny anymore. Like it was an excuse maybe 10 years ago, but today it's just it's just heartbreaking, because what it says that not only we give away all the capital to guys to build new products, but it also says that women do not believe in the way they see world and the problems that they see. They don't feel that comfortable enough to make it and build a business around it and use tech.
So that also means we have to look holistically. Someone in a wheelchair once explained to me, you can have 7 wonderful ramps and privileged access for me everywhere, but if there's one bump in the road, I'm still stuck. So every bump needs to be alleviated before we fix it. Is that the same in here?
I think it's we will never get to a perfect situation. So I think the best part is to find the pieces where we miss out most, like the ones that are, like a leak in a pipe. So we need to find those places that we're leaking, which is like early education, entrepreneurship, etc. So we kind of build up on strong foundations, and the other parts will fix themselves up.
Pete, you already mentioned there are different levels of mainstreaming. We can start very well, but if we don't follow up, it doesn't work. Can we see the next question in the voting system? This is actually, so our green and our digital policy are also gender, and here you can rank them on a scale from not at all to fully. You can say aware, they realize there are gender aspects on it. They're also addressing some of these issues and suggesting perhaps policy proposals. Then the second is they also measure, so they count, they do research, and they perhaps benchmark. The next one is they legislate. They also make it mandatory to fix it, or it's just merely a suggestion. And also they train and they give examples to not only make legislation, but also help people to implement it. So you can rank, the first votes are not very positive. So they say really rarely aware, addressing suggestion, legislation, legislation, that's what policymakers know. That's the easiest part, perhaps. And the training is very little. We see a lot of bumps on the road, so people are completely in disagreement in this room. But as we start to see more or less a line like this, we're aware, but we don't follow up. Monica, is also something you recognize? We are aware of some issues, but we don't really fix them.
I think it's. I don't know if we're not fixing them. I think it's already moving, and we cannot escape it. But at the same time, even in this technology world, we are focusing so much on bringing women to tech sector and focusing a lot on technology skills and what companies should change, etc. But at the same time, we miss out on women because they very early lose confidence of being builders, of being capable builders despite the tools that are available in their environment. And I feel that the Green Deal, the green perspective, it will be so benefited by women builders because they see different problems. And they see different issues. They see subtle parts that might be missed out by others, and that's the beauty of diversity. And that's why we have to keep working.
Okay, also in the audience perhaps, so of the things we just listed that are important in mainstreaming, which one should we highlight perhaps more, or which one are we forgetting, or which one is the, if you could choose only one, which one would you do? May I ask you, what is really important when we do mainstreaming? Is it the measuring, the legislating, the helping people also implementing it?
Well, all of those, but to get the right policies and legislation, then you first need the data, and to get the data you need some form of knowledge and thoughts on what you want to measure, so it's
it all starts with data.
Yes, indeed.
Yesterday in the procurement session, we kind of came, if you legislate without educate and without making people aware and also intrinsically motivated to solve it, it becomes a checklist, some red tape, and people just try to work around it. Do you is that the same here in green and digital policies and gender?
Well, I'm not an expert on these themes, but I guess it is kind of, yes.
Okay, I see you nodding. Legislation without education is just a burden.
Yes, I totally agree. Because if people don't understand why they are doing things, what is the point in doing things, what is the effect of the way the legislation is drafted, then they won't bother. Yeah. They just say, okay, I tick it and I move on.
Yeah.
I have other work to do.
Okay. Katie, how important is it that policymakers in the field of the green transition are aware and intrinsically motivated to tackle gender issues?
Yeah, I think that's very important, because otherwise, I mean, what we see a bit now is it got a bit of buzzword maybe, but then we don't really walk the talk. So awareness raising and capacity building, I think, is a huge issue and needs to be done. But then on the second step is also, I agree, we do need data, and there's a lack of data to inform policies. But then I think there's also a lot of evidence that we have right now. So how can we actually ensure that we walk the talk? And I think one concrete example are conditionalities or gender budgeting or something similar, for example, could have done when we had the recovery and resilience plan. So a certain percentage need to be digital, another environmental. So we could have done maybe something else with gender. So this investment needs to contribute 30% or 50% to gender equality. So I think it needs to be a full package, and we cannot hide behind this fact, oh yeah, we have a lack of data. So I think we also have a lot of evidence, and we need to follow up actions.
Okay, we need that, and then we need the carrot, the stick, and the talks to get to the walks. Okay, well, let's hear from some policymakers. We invited 3 of them. Two of them are joining us online, and one of us joining us physically. Martin, Sarah, and Anna, please join us. You get applause for just being here, yeah. Can you jump on stage? Yeah. Take a seat, there's a microphone for you. Martin Fatura, you're the director of the Department of EU Affairs at the Ministry of Education, Youth and Sport of the Czech Republic, currently holding the presidency of the EU. Yeah, what of the things you heard you think, ooh, that's a wake-up call for us policymakers? You have to talk a bit like a rapper in the, yeah.
Okay, I'll try to be more rapper. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here, and I absolutely agree when you said, when we were speaking about kindergarten teachers being role model, because I think that's where the story begins. One number, 19%, that's the number of university graduates in ICT, against 81% who are men, 19% are women. Where this all starts, I personally believe it starts with the confidence and with the confidence building. And it doesn't start with the beginning of the studies at the university. It starts in the primary education and the secondary education. The thing is, how can we change that? May we change that just by changing curriculums or, I don't know, changing the setup? I'm not pretty sure about that. I think what we need is to bring more well-being principles into the education, either in primary, secondary, tertiary education. Because what I personally believe, if the pupils, girls, will feel more supported, more secure, more safe, they could be also more confident in regards to ICT. And that was just one of the reasons why we have chosen as the presidency country the topic of ICT well-being or digital well-being, and we have prepared the conclusions on supporting well-being in education or digital education.
Okay, well, great. We're going to talk more about how we could make this work. Sarah Nelen, you're the Deputy Head of Cabinet of Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans of the European Commission. Yeah, you can drop your trucks' CO2 emission level policy any second now. How much is gender a part of that?
Okay, unmuted, that helps. Thanks for inviting, and thanks for the important conference you're organizing, because before going into the trucks, I would like to highlight, for instance, something that Monica has underlined as well, and that is the strong foundations that are needed. Because, well, the risk is, if I'm going now too detailed on the trucks, I think mainstreaming indeed is very important, but as long as you don't have the fundamental rights, the fundamentals of the policy of gender equality not right, it's very difficult to go into the different sectors. So structural changes, and that starts of course with the number of men and women represented in decision-making, in our parliaments, in our administrations, in posts where decisions are made, that is crucial. And that helps as well towards the youngsters and the early education, what has been mentioned. If you have role models as a girl, as any person, the diverse public, having people in positions helps you to think, that is normal, I can do that. And that is still a way to go. We're not yet there. Second, next to decision-making, really the economic element, the employment side of things, and the balance between private life and work. And that is immensely important. And I'm very happy that I have young fathers as colleagues who take a few months off to stay with their young children, because that really helps to bring this balance that the work life and the private life are for both sexes there, and it's the evolution for the future. So that a woman, because she has children, is not selected for a post. And I'm really grateful for all the young men who are doing their best to take the role of young fathers, and which really helps for the balance in the employment life as well. And perhaps a third fundamental point, and I think after the period of COVID that we have seen, has become more important. The element of Me Too, violence, etc. It's there as well as an unfinished story, an element of policies and decision makers to really still take into account. Every day we have news on, for instance, on the Flemish news today, it was a professor who raped a student, etc. All of this gender-based violence remains a crucial point that needs to get sufficient attention. And these fundamentals will help because we have more diversity in decision making, because we have women who feel safe to...
Yeah, I think we're back. Yes, please continue. Yeah, we got you back.
Okay,
Thank
sorry.
you. Yeah.
I don't know where you lost me.
At your last point.
Okay, no, coming back to your example, after these fundamentals, I think indeed with the trucks that you mentioned, there is obviously the employment side. I guess I don't have the precise statistics, but it doesn't take, well, it only takes common sense to see that it's a male-dominated job sector. And I think there as well, diversity is good. So jobs for the future, to have women represented there as well. But it has been said already, I think Katie was the one who mentioned the sustainable use, or the more sustainable transport choices of women, using more public transport, etc. Now, I don't want to go into the simplistic vision of it's women and they're more sustainable. Obviously, it has an economic angle as well. They often have less money to use to buy a car, to use a car, to have a car from their employer, what often is the case for men in certain positions. But being aware of all these elements is important, and I think it's good policies are policies where you have a lot of data, where you take a bigger view on the problems, and you inform yourself, and that is informed decision making that leads to better decisions, whether it's on trucks or on other subject matters. But transport-wise, it's clear. If you look at the truck sector, the car sector, also the positions are very male-dominated, which brings me back to my first point. We need more women in decision-making, also in those sectors, because it's not, because maybe on Thursday we have a agreement at the European level. I hope so, that the negotiations with Parliament and the Council are to take place still on Thursday. But the end of the cars as we know them with emissions in 2035. That is what is at stake and is being negotiated. So zero CO2 emissions as of 2035 doesn't mean we have zero cars. It will be the electric cars. And then we come as well to the digital sector, and which is part of our discussions here. We need more women in that sector as well.
Can you take us into the Berlaymont building? You have these discussions, and right now you're spitting out legislation on the Green Deal. It's a high pressure cooker. You're under time pressure. You're on a lot of pressure from all kind of fixed interests, being the member states, being it producers, being it labor unions. How do you still make room for gender discussions and being gender aware while formulating these policies?
Yeah. Well, I think, as I mentioned, good policies are policies well thought through. And these ones are part of things where we don't just act lightly. As an essential key element of the Green Deal, we have the just transition and the social element of it. And that is a red thread into all our legislation, and that is, to a large extent, also to the benefit of more vulnerable people and often women, because we need the cost of this transition on individuals, on household, is big. The cost of non-action is bigger, huh? So that it's not a reason not to, as you say, bulldozer through these proposals, because the longer we wait, the higher the cost will be, because the climate change, as we see it every day, is not waiting. So building in this social just transition is in itself a real important element that should benefit gender equality.
And do you also first-handly see the importance of different people in this decision-making process? If the boardroom is not just filled with men, do you see different people taking different roles in this discussion?
Yeah. I'm not those who will say you have 50, I mean, I think I heard it by somebody else here, put 50% of women and all our problems are solved, and it will be to the benefit of women. No, it's not that simple at all. But just for the sake of it, it is important to have that diversity, and the 50% or more in one or the other direction with a bit of variation is fine. So it's not that simplistic, but diversity in general helps you to make more informed positions, having different points of view. I think somebody made the reference as well to the building sector, and they're having, for instance, there are more women, and I agree with that. And that's a personal anecdote, but my architect for a renovation in my house was a couple. I had two for the price of one, and it brought different visions on some ideas from one and more practical ideas. I don't want to stereotype that it was a female architect. On the other hand, so diversity as such, gender is one element of that, brings better decisions because it makes people think of wider issues and different issues.
Okay, well, wonderful. I hope a lot of good policies keep coming out of your cabinet. Anne Pepin, you're the Senior Policy Officer at the DG R&I, DG Research and Innovation. Yeah, how big is gender an issue in research and innovation policies?
Good morning. Thanks a lot for this invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here, albeit virtually. Very interesting points already made by the young panel and by the other commentators. And yes, I'd like to highlight here how in DG Research and Innovation and through various policy actions and our core funding program, Horizon Europe, we're trying to address some of these issues. So gender equality and increasing women's participation to research and innovation has been a long-standing priority for our Commissioner, Maria Gabriel. And one of the objectives of the European Strategy for Universities, which was adopted earlier this year, and in this European Year of Youth, is to strengthen women and girls' participation into science, technology, engineering, mathematics, so STEM studies and careers, including through a manifesto for gender-inclusive STEAM education and careers, and to commit education, research and innovation actors to this manifesto. And the A in STEAM refers to the inclusion of arts, social science, humanities, creativity, and putting in context STEM education. And that's an approach that can also make STEM studies and careers more attractive to some women.
Yes. And how does it, in your policy-making work, you already mentioned it's important that the boss says this is important and sets a ship. Is it important that there is this one person that goes around every room and knocks, hey, gender is important? Or should you get to a point where everybody automatically wakes up and thinks, for every policy I'm going to draft, I think of gender?
Well, actually, that's what we're trying to do. But just to finish on this manifesto, we want also to consult the large community. And there's an ongoing survey, and I would invite everybody to fill it in, actually, on what type of principle we can put in such a manifesto. And I can give the link later. But it's been mentioned, to have a structural change, institutional change approach to gender equality. And we've been supporting the implementation of gender equality plans in research and innovation organization for over a decade now, and there's a wealth of knowledge and practical good practice that has been developed. And actually, we've developed a very fruitful collaboration with EIGE to develop this tool that actually Claudia has presented at the beginning, the GEAR tool, which is really a step-by-step online guidance for academic and research organizations to design, implement, and monitor gender equality plans. And actually, in Horizon Europe, we have now introduced this as a requirement. So any academic, research organization, or even public bodies that wants to have access to Horizon funding needs to have in place a gender equality plan that fulfills a set of mandatory requirements. And those have been mentioned: collecting data, doing capacity building, decision-making that supports this, and actually putting resources to implement it, addressing work-life balance, recruitment, promotions, gender-based violence, and also something that's really important, that was touched upon by Katie mainly, is to integrate into the design, into the contents of research and innovation, a gender dimension, to look at potential sex and or gender differences as variables in the research itself, in the products that will be developed, that should benefit all of society and promote gender equality. This is something we've been pushing for, and which is now a requirement also across Horizon Europe. All projects developing research and innovation have to integrate this gender dimension. And this is true for health,
but
also AI.
When we asked our participants to rank EU policies also on the digital and green space on gender inclusivity, they weren't very generous with their points. Are they underestimating how much the Commission is already doing?
I would say in the case of Horizon Europe, yes, it's yes to be proven, let's say, because the program has only started,
okay, well, we're going to collect the data to see if we...
a year ago. But really, what we put in place as requirements, as gender equality provision, and also funding gender studies, intersectional research, it's really a step change compared to the previous program, Horizon 2020. Okay. So we do expect that these requirements, and we see that happening across Europe.
In a few years, we're going to ask the poll question again and then see how the audience ranks it then. Yes. We have a few minutes left. We would like to go a little bit in how to get girls into the STEM, to choose these subjects. Some people are really, you're getting baked in the sun. You're allowed to move, but if you like the sun, become a salamander. Take your phone again, and we're going to ask you the question, so how can we help girls pursue STEM education? And you can divide 100 points or 100 euros or 100 efforts into some categories. It's make lessons more engaging. So I misspelled lessons. I did Steiner education. Make lessons more engaging. Get more role models in the classroom. So teachers who are maybe not men, or entrepreneurs who are women, bring them into the classrooms. Let children visit tech companies and teach them early, because we know after they're 12, anything they haven't seen yet, they are going to discard. Awareness campaigns about gender stereotypes in sectors. So basically say, you're a girl, you can still be a pilot. Quota or preference in special programs. If you have special programs, reserve some spaces for not only boys. Improve working conditions in the tech sector. Make part-time work available. Not having 2 jokes, that's what my wife said before your first coffee. Those kind of things. But you could also say, do nothing, it will solve itself. Times are changing, we don't need policies, things will happen automatically. Or leave the girls alone. If they don't want to be in tech, let them do something they like better. So far, those are not very popular here. Martin, where would you put your money?
To be honest, to some other option, maybe.
Of course.
I think individualization of education could be the way. Because as we are talking about confidence of young women or of the people, sometimes the confidence is being blocked by the reaction of, let's say, the collective or the society. And in case we could react on the specific needs of, for example, wish of pupils, of young women, I am convinced that that could help to change the environment. And
Unless we try to put different people in the same education model and more model the education around different people, we get better results. Okay.
Absolutely, and digitalization, that's a tool actually that could enable us to do, and of course, in some way, to do it this way.
Yeah, Pete, what would you say?
All the actions included, all of them, plus that, plus other things. I think if we focus on the learner at the center, the model will adapt based on the needs, and I think that needs to reflect on cross-sectorial approach. Not one solution is the perfect solution. We need to as well ask those people that we want to engage further beyond education, what do they need? And for me, it's a little bit disappointing listening on what do we need to do on an educational level when even if we do it engaging, the role models are lacking, the sector or the programs or the financing or the policies are lacking, which means that even if I choose as a young girl or a trans woman to go to this sector, what are my options for going up in the scale of hierarchy? What are my chances to go in a different direction from what is normally done in my gender or in my background or in my racial profiling that exists within the market? And that's what we also need to see.
So if we only do the education part, they might be 14 till they drop off, but they need to have this perspective. This is a place where I have also belonging. Yeah, Monica, what would you say? What's going to work?
I would love to have these answers and to know what will work in the future. So I always say to the kids I work with, I don't know any answers. If you meet an adult who tells they know the future, just run away from them, because we are just making best guesses we can today. When I became a mom, I read this book about French parenting, and what stuck with me and what kept coming back to me in neuroscience studies is that kids between age and 7 and 12, they're in their sampling age. So if they eat broccoli soup, if they eat some crazy cheese when they're 8, they will never think of it an awkward thing for them to do. So that's why I work with kids in 7 to 12, because when they sample technology creation at an early age, it's not an issue if, it's how. It's just a part of their basic skill set, that's one. And the second thing is, we underestimate what we already have in technology education. What you said about what you would like to individualize, that's exactly what we do with kids. Because technology creation is in itself interdisciplinary. What we see increasing in the classroom from teachers' perspective is creativity, imagination, logical and critical thinking, inclusivity, and motivation to learn. So technology skill learning is already diverse because there's no one right answer. You are owner and self-directed learner, so you own your own learning and you're represented, your dreams, your ideas are represented, and at the same time, you're learning deep, critical and also difficult concepts while you're 8 and you don't even understand it.
And also, I think it was also mentioned before, I read an article that says, let's replace STEM with STEAM, because if we that includes the arts. If we make more connections between the topics and have it less about numbers or more about functions and things we can do with it, that already makes a big difference.
Yes, there's also STREAM, where you add R for relationships. So you can add as many letters as you want, but it's also about understanding that kids today, they do not question if technology is part of their lives. It's us still discussing. So we need to ask them how they want to learn, because it's already are the tools that they will create in the future. We waited for hundreds of years to get girls to schools, for 100 of years to make sure that girls know how to read and write. we cannot do the same with technology skills. We just don't have the opportunity.
Yeah. Anna Pepin, do we have... Oh, yeah, you get applause for this. Very good. Anna, in the Horizon policies, do we also make sure that from a very young age, all children are being connected to all those wonderful things in Horizon so that they think, maybe this is my career perspective as well?
Well, Horizon is above all a research and innovation program, and in Erasmus there are more programs addressing directly education, but we do have some research projects to foster STEM education, STEAM education, and several projects that are aimed at increasing or bridging the gap in innovation and in STEM innovation. So we do have several projects that foster this.
Okay, I'm looking into the audience. Did we forget an important measure to make also this education more gender inclusive? Yeah, I see here maybe one. Can we get the microphone to Nikki?
I'm going to come back to the theme of care, I guess. I mean, I think it's so important what these participants have been saying about getting more girls into STEAM or with the R as well. But actually, we also need to get more boys into other kinds of jobs. Yes, great, encourage boys to do tech, but also encourage them to be teachers, to be doing other things. So we need to make sure that we look at both of those, and we also need to make sure that we don't think of boys, girls, women, men as one blob. We're very, 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 very diverse. So intersectionality, I think you were mentioning, absolutely key, and we need to bring that in as well.
Okay, if we have a too narrow focus on one problem, we're not thinking right. Okay, that's a very good one. Yeah, we're coming to an end. We have one more. Can you get the microphone here?
Thank you to invite me. Very interesting, these opinions. I am not from the education sector. I am from the communication sector. And yesterday and today, I have heard that the data, the unification of the data are the most important problem we have in all the sectors to apply the policies. I am here, and I said to me, I am in representation of a network. GAMAC Europe is a network of journalists and communicators and teachers of university. And I would like to say, I think, why not all the people here, we can write a short letter to the president of the commission or parliamentaries, etc., and to ask for an effort to unify this data. I think that they are doing this as EIGE, but it is a very important...
Very good data, combine all the data, so we have better data, so we make better policy.
Yes,
that's a wonderful proposal.
If we have not good data, we cannot work and do a very good information.
Okay, that's a very good suggestion. We might, you all get a sign at the end before you leave. Claudia, can I ask you back to the stage? And also we asked, the last question we asked you in the voting system, also for you people at home, is what should be the steps forward that you propose?
Yeah.
Claudia, did you hear a lot of things that are going to make it better?
Yeah, we speak about STEM, about STEAM, about STREAM. We speak about gender mainstreaming. So that's indeed, when we speak about data, without putting to the policy cycle this gender mainstream, we can't have data.
On the other hand, all the data, we see boys are getting in tech, girls are not. That's the data you need.
Yeah, that's true. But of course, we need more important. But this is also, we know also as a statistician that to put together all the data is a very tough exercise. But of course, if we be aware about that and building our awareness in order to again, build the policy, it's our starting point. And for, of course, putting into the education system this awareness is an order.
And EIGE keeps supporting research and policy proposals?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, well, then let's hope that this session in 10 years is not needed, because not only young children who identify as men choose a career in this path, but all children do it. And also we make sure the outcomes of our green and our digital policies not only benefit people, not only men, but also people who identify differently. That's wonderful. And we didn't hand out one chocolate. That's a compliment for you. This was an understandable, or maybe we're also too much policy nerds that we all understand this, but we had a hopefully pretty inclusive discussion. Thank you so much to all our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for organizing this session. And I hope you have a good lunch, and see you later.